Hello, and welcome to Zenithstrand Guide to Stuff. In this video, we're going to talk about PvP. What exactly is PvP? How does PvP combat differ from other types of combat? Is there an etiquette to this? We will answer these questions in order to demystify PvP. PvP stands for player versus player. While not an everyday occurrence, PvP is fairly common. It can be as simple as quietly ensuring that someone bleeds out on the battlefield, or as grand as challenging someone to an honor duel in front of the entire town. PvP usually falls into one of four categories: collaborative, immersive, competitive, and malicious. Collaborative is when two or more people get together out of the game and plan an in-game hostility between their characters and set parameters for how that hostility will be conducted in-game. Often players using this method will check in with each other between and after games to ensure hostilities are still wanted. Immersive PvP is simply treating all in-game characters, whether they are PCs or NPCs, player characters, non-player characters, exactly the same in regards to what level of aggression their actions warrant from your character. This method should be paired with check-ins with other players after hostilities to explain why aggressions were warranted by your character, but doesn't have the forewarning element that collaborative PvP benefits from. Competitive PvP is when one or more characters' ideals or roles brings them into conflict with another player or group of players and choose to resolve this conflict with combat. This method usually involves a fair amount of planning to create the most effective means to defeat a specific character with the least risk possible to the aggressor. It often involves elaborate plan, the collecting of resources and accomplices for the sole purpose of targeting a specific character when they are most vulnerable. Sometimes, this form of PvP is also directed at lower level players that pose little threat to a higher level aggressor and have no legitimate reason to bring a conflict towards them. This is done, generally, because it is easier to kill new players. This is referred to as ganking. This type of PvP is highly discouraged, but is very difficult to fairly adjudicate. Players in Zenithstrand who make a habit of ganking may find themselves being asked not to return to game. Malicious PvP is fueled by out-of-game reasoning and motivations. It is when a player targets another player with the express purpose of driving them out of the game as a whole. It doesn't matter what the target is playing as a character or what they do in-game. The aggressor will take any opportunity, either while on the plot team NPC or as their own character, to remove the target from play. This is done with the intent the target player will eventually leave the game entirely out of frustration and anger at being killed over and over again. This type of PvP may get you banned. PvP plays differently than PvE. One is player versus player combat, the other is player versus environment. PvE is much more common and occurs each time the players engage in battle against monsters or common enemies sent from the plot team. Although the rules are the same for PvP as they are for PvE, PvP can feel more personal and even cause hurt feelings, especially if the person you find yourself fighting against is someone you thought was an ally. In PvE, when the plot team sends monsters to challenge you, the NPC you're fighting as a group won't typically use all of their abilities against just you, preferring to spread their actions and their abilities around to multiple players. In PvP, your opponent may not give you that concession. Another player will go all out to defend themselves. PvP can be fast and deadly. Much like any part of the game, some people enjoy PvP and some people do not. Just because you have the ability to attack another player's character doesn't mean that you have to do so. But should you decide to engage in collaborative or immersive PvP, there are some questions of etiquette to consider. Firstly, make sure to consider the experience and feelings of the player on the receiving end of your attack. It might seem like a great plan to kidnap someone and keep them paralyzed. However, it's not much fun to be the person who can no longer participate in the game that they have come to. If the fight results in death, it can mean the end of a character's story, so the actions should at least be meaningful and story-driven. And remember, killing another player's character isn't your only option available. Sometimes outsmarting your enemy tells the best story for all players involved. Second, don't engage in PvP near the end of game. This is a matter of etiquette more than a solid rule. Many view endgame PvP as unsportsmanlike, since your target may not have the chance to respond to what has happened due to the game ending. It can even be viewed as an attempt to use the out-of-game situation to help you avoid retaliation, especially if you play a different character next game. If you are going to win a conflict with another player, it should not be by using out-of-game means. Third, if possible, inform the plot team prior to the planned PvP. We know this isn't always viable. Sometimes arguments boil over into violence, or a crime of opportunity presents itself. However, if you are seeking a fight, bringing a marshal along is always a good idea. The marshal can address any rules questions that come up and ensure that the fight stays fair, at least on an out-of-game level. Finally, don't forget to follow up with the other player out of game. This will help prevent hard feelings between you and them and also help manage bleed, which you can learn more about in our other videos. Remember that LARPing is meant to be fun. Although being on the receiving end of PvP can sometimes be unpleasant, when used respectfully, PvP can add to the story and enhance the shared experience of all involved. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you all at Underworld Zenithstrand.